Namo thassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo thassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo thassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. You have all come a long way, haven't you? All I had to do was come down from up there. But you've had to come a long way. Well, I suppose, not just in the literal sense, but also in the metaphorical sense. In that sense, all of us have come a very long way. I'd like to remind you at the very beginning something I spoke to you about towards the end of last week's sermon. I can see some new faces, and you're all welcome. But I must remind you what our purpose is of coming along. This is not a get-together. We're not here to have fun. We're not here to party. We're here to achieve one purpose and one purpose alone. One goal, one ambition. That is all we are here to achieve. That is why I'm here, and that is why you should be here. I didn't ordain for the fun of it. I didn't ordain for the sake of it. There was one purpose, one goal, one ambition. This goal, this ambition was a dream a long time ago. For many countless births in samsara, this was a dream of mine, but that's all it ever was. A dream. A dream that was never going to come true. How do I rid myself of all suffering? How can I be happy? How can I find fulfillment in life and satisfaction in life? Where is it? Why is it so difficult to get hold of it? Why is it so elusive? Every time I think I'm there, it's gone. Every time you reach out, put your hand out to catch it, it's gone. Why is that? This is what we are here to understand. There are lots of things that you could have done on a Sunday afternoon. For those of you who are new, Sunday afternoons will usually be quite different to today, would it not? There'd be plenty of things if I asked you to write down a list of the things you could be doing right now. Instead of being here, I think you'd ask me for how many pages do you want in that book? You'd want a pretty hefty book to write that. There's lots of things we could be doing right now. Just think back at your lives and all the things that you've been doing. All these things to try and be happy. I'll come to that in a moment. But I want to remind you what I left you with last week. On one occasion, the Buddha addresses his monks. He says, monks, from the time that I resolved to become a Supreme Buddha, I have been fulfilling these perfections, the paramita. And the perfections are threefold. You will have heard of them, parami, upaparami, paramatta parami. And there's also another categorization, mano pranidhana, vachi pranidhana, kaya pranidhana. So this is how you fulfill those perfections. Initially you start with mano pranidhana, which is simply a mental resolve. I will do it. I will get it done someday when it happens. And then it turns into the vachi pranidhana. You express that verbally. You go looking for people that can help you with that. You go looking for teachers. Because remember, it was only until the Buddha sat down under the Bodhi tree, or the Bodhisattva, Gautama, or rather Siddhartha sat down under the Bodhi tree, he realized, I'm not going to find a teacher to help me do this. There's no teacher that can help me do this. Even in his last birth, did he not go looking for teachers to help him do it? To help him find salvation? You've heard of Uddaka Ramaputta, Alara Kalam, right? Teachers that he went looking for. What's the science behind this? Give me something that I can use to get across this ocean of samsara. I'm suffering. I need help. Help me. Give me whatever you've got. And they gave him everything they got. Everything they got, he took, but nothing really helped him achieve what he wanted. So it was only under the Bodhi tree he realized, I'm never going to find a teacher to help me do this. So what happens if you go and find a teacher? What do you do then? You got to figure it out yourself. That one thing he realized, I have to figure out myself. If you and I could have figured it out ourselves, how many of us would be here right now? If any of us were able to figure it out ourselves, would we be here right now? No, we wouldn't be here right now. Like I said, this is not a get-together. We're not here for the fun of it. I'm not here for the fun of it. At our monastery, we do about 8 hours of meditation every day. And on a Sunday, I have to break my meditation halfway through to come down and do this sermon. So I'm not doing this for the fun of it. I'd much prefer to continue doing my meditation. Because the peacefulness, the calmness that I feel, the serenity I feel in my mind, I can't express in words. Because when I'm there, sat down with my eyes half shut, sat down in front of the Bodhisattva statue, taking occasional glances at him, just to remind myself what kind of dedication and commitment there was behind this figure, this great man, to help me get here, to help me do this. It sends a shiver down my spine. I feel rejuvenated. I feel energized. I feel a kind of bliss I cannot explain in words. I don't think I ever will be. The only way you're going to figure it out, the only way you're going to experience it, is one day when you start doing it. I can teach you the Dhamma, but I can't comprehend it for you. I can't understand it on your behalf. You've got to do it. Well, if the Buddha couldn't, how am I going to be able to do it? On your behalf? No, you've got to do it. So the Buddha says, monks, since I made my mental resolve that I was going to become a Buddha, from that point forward, all the way until the time I attained enlightenment, I came past 512,027 Supreme Buddhas. 512,027. 512,000. Can you imagine that? Buddhas? We're not talking cats and dogs. We're not talking arahants. We're not talking about Pacceka Buddhas. Pacceka Buddhas, sometimes there are hundreds of them at any given time. But in 10,000 world systems, there can only be how many Buddhas? One. We live in one world system, where there are 6 heavens, 16 Brahma worlds, human worlds. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to go into the detail. There are 4 of them, but let's not get there, because I know that's going to unsettle you. And there are hells, 4 great hells. All of this together is a world system, 31 worlds in a world system. For 10,000 world systems, actually no, I got it wrong. 100,000 world systems, there's only one Buddha. Why did the number 10,000 come to me? Only beings who are in the nearest 10,000 can come along and listen to a sermon when you invite them. Those beings who live beyond the 10,000, they do not have enough of a lifespan to get here. Not even speed of light is enough for them to get here and listen to a sermon when we invite them to come along. But although you can't see them, they're here. If I can't see it, it's not there, right? You know, that was me all along. But I digress. I'll come there in a moment. I want to complete what the Buddha said. The Buddha said, 512,027 Buddhas I came past. Those of you who know will know that there's a period of time, a measure of time called an eon. Kalpa. You'll have heard that word, right? An eon. In Sinhala it's called a kalpa. Once when a monk goes and asks the Buddha, Venerable Sir, how long is an eon? He says, I cannot give you a number. Because this is an incalculable eon we are talking about. That's what it says on the tin. Incalculable. Means you can't count it. You can't finish counting it. So he says, I shall try to give you an analogy. Or a metaphor even. Or perhaps a simile. Of what an eon is. And he says, if you were to build yourself a box, let's take a cuboid, length, breadth and height, 16 miles each way, 16 miles long, 16 miles wide and 16 miles in breadth. 16 miles, that's about 23 kilometers, if my math is correct. 23 kilometers. Imagine that. Just think about your commute from home. How long is that commute? How long does it take you? Now imagine that as the crow flies. 23 kilometers in one direction. 23 kilometers in the other direction. And then breadth. Length, breadth and width. Or height. Build yourself a cuboid and fill this up with what did he say? What seeds? Mustard seeds. How big is a mustard seed? Well, you know the answer. Fill this up with mustard seeds. And then, once every 100 years, a man comes along and removes one seed. Once every 100 years. Someone comes along and removes a seed. One mustard seed. Can you imagine the volume of this thing? 23 kilometers long, 23 kilometers wide, 23 kilometers in height. Filled with mustard seeds to the brim. One man comes along, removes one seed at a time, not every day, not every month, not every year, once every 100 years, once a century. The Buddha says, there will come a day when this box has been emptied of mustard seeds, but yet an incalculable eon has not yet elapsed. That is one incalculable eon. In the time we've come past in samsara, we have come past how many of these? Well, this is the metaphor the Buddha is about to give, which I'll explain to you now. You know, this is a Bhadrakalpa. In a Bhadrakalpa, there are 5 Buddhas come along in this one Kalpa. 5 supreme Buddhas come into this world and they preach the Dhamma. The Dhamma which disappears after a while. He comes along and discovers it. Not invent, but discover. The truth. This is the truth. You can't destroy the truth. It's just there. Sometimes it's hidden away. You just have to discover it. So this is what supreme Buddhas do. 5 Buddhas come along in a Bhadrakalpa and they render this service to all sentient beings. But I think that if there's anything that's rare in this world, in all of the universe, that must be a Bhadrakalpa. I can't think of anything that's more rare than a Bhadrakalpa. A kalpa in which there are we get to see the advent of 5 Supreme Buddhas. But most of the time that we come past in samsara are kalpas which are void of Buddhas. For every kalpa in which there is one Buddha, there's probably hundreds of thousands of kalpas where there are no Buddhas. Void of a Buddha. Hundreds of thousands of kalpas. No Buddha. For every kalpa there is one Buddha. I'm talking about the ratio. For every kalpa there is just one Buddha. Not talking about Bhadrakalpa. There is just one Buddha. There's probably hundreds of thousands of kalpas where there are no Buddhas. 70,000 on some occasions the Buddha says himself. For 70,000 eons there was no Buddha. So he says, from the time I started fulfilling these perfections, when I started to do it mentally, I came past 512,027 Buddhas. Can you imagine how long that must have been? If a kalpa is that long, and most of the kalpas are those that are void of Buddhas, and for every kalpa there is one Buddha, there are about hundreds of thousands of kalpas without a Buddha. Can you imagine how much time must he have come past to come past 512,027 Buddhas? Now here's the thing. When he's asked the question, how long did you fulfill these perfections? He thinks, 512,027 Buddhas. It takes him that long to come up with that answer. A flash of a second. Because we are talking about a Supreme Buddha, who is limitless in power, in supernatural power, in mental power, in psychic power. There's no limit to it. Infinite. How big is infinite? Oh, it's infinite. So he can look back as far as he wants. In the time it takes me to do this, he's looked back and he says, I have come past 512,000 Supreme Buddhas. Now you tell me, how many Buddhas might he have been able to look back in the time it takes me to do this? So twice. If this is how long it takes for him to look at the time he's come past, 505, let's keep it simple, 500,000 Buddhas. The time it takes me to do this twice, how many Buddhas? How many Buddhas? 1,000,000 Buddhas. And then 3 times? 1,500,000. You get the idea? Okay. So if he had looked back into his past, let's say he did it for an hour, how many Buddhas do you think he'll be able to look at? Yeah, exactly. I can't even work it out. There you go. That's a guesstimate, I suppose. Billions of Buddhas, right? So he will have been able to look at the time that all these Buddhas came into this world, disseminated the Dhamma and passed away. Now, here's the shocking bit. If you remember from last week, he says, monks, I would like to offer you a simile. He says, monks, if you were to travel across this entire world, sweep the globe, and collect as you go along every blade of grass you can ever find, every tree from every leaf that you can ever find, every twig, every branch in every tree that you can ever find on this entire planet, bring it all to one place. Now chop them up into bits of 4 inches. And then once you've done that, start counting. Counting what? The mothers that you have come past in samsara. He says, piece 1, my mother. Piece number 2, my mother's mother. Piece number 3, my mother's mother's mother. So, great-grandmother. And then great-great-grandmother. Great-great-great-grandmother. You get the idea? So what he's saying is, take one bit, leave it, and count. That's one of your mother's mother. He says, you will have consumed all the twigs and leaves and blades of grass that you have collected, but you'll still be counting mothers. And then he says, it only took me that long to look back at that samsara and tell you that I have come past 512,000 Buddhas. In the time it takes me to do this, I can look back at 1,000,000 Buddhas. In the time it takes me to do this, I can look back and tell you about 1,500,000 Buddhas. But despite that, monks, I cannot look at any of you and tell you when you started this journey in samsara. He says, I cannot see when you started this journey in samsara. Who's this saying? A Supreme Buddha. A Supreme Buddha saying, I, of all beings there is. This is not the great elder Mugalan, who is chief among those with supernatural powers. This is not the great elder Sariputta, who is chief among those bhikkhus with wisdom. This is neither of them speaking. It's the Supreme Buddha speaking. The great elder Mugalan's supernatural powers is incomparable with the Buddha. Yes, he's chief, but this is the Buddha. There's nothing that can compare. He looks back at so far and says, I still cannot see when you started this journey in samsara. Does that not shock you? From head to toe? So, begs the question, what have we been doing all this long? What was I doing all this time in samsara? What have I been doing? As a human, you would have been doing things. As an animal, as a being in the four great hells, as a preta, spirits and demons. Actually, most of the time we spent in the four great hells. So we've been there. You've also been a deva. Yes. How many times? For every handful of water you take out of the ocean, whatever's left, whatever water's left in the ocean, that's the ratio between how many times you've been born as a deva compared to how many times you've been born in the four great hells. Sorry, not you, me. I don't want to upset any of you. I'm talking about myself. This is why I got on this stage, to give you a talk about myself. That's how many times I've been a deva compared to how many times I've been born in the four great hells. I'm talking about me, okay? Don't anyone take any offense. Talking about me. You were not like that. You were the other way around. But me, this is how I was. For every time I was born a Brahma, that's one grain of sand of all the grains of sand there is on this planet. That's the ratio between how many times I was born a Brahma and the times I was born in the four great hells. Not you, me. So no one has to take any offense. So again, begs the question. I was born a deva. I was born a Brahma. I'm now a human being, not for the first time. I was born an animal, a spirit, demons. What was I doing all this time? I must have been doing something. What do you think you were doing? Not a lot different to what you're doing right now. Not very different to what you're doing right now. Not much different. It's the same old stuff. Different clothes. Different day. Same thing. It's like going to work. Different clothes. Different day. But same old stuff, right? And what happens when you wear that set of clothes to work? You bring it home, you wash it, and you wear it another day. That's how our life was in samsara. I was born a demon, and then at the end of that existence, took off my clothes, put it in the washing, only to do what? Oh, just put it back on another day. I was like going to work. So what have we been doing? Not very different to what you're doing right now. And what is it you're doing right now then? I don't mean right now in this very room, although it is still the same thing. But in your existence, in this birth as a human being. Because I know there may be those among you who do not like to think about past lives or lives in the great hells. I mean, how can you prove it? How can we even know that there are great hells? Well, of course, the animal realm we can see because they're among us. There's flies and mosquitoes and birds and bees and beasts. But still one could question, okay, that's them. What makes you think that I'm going to be born as one of them? Don't you feel like that? I'm born, I live, I die, that's the end of it. Aren't there among you, those among you who feel that way? Aren't there those among you who feel, I'm never going to go into the great hells? A Deva? Okay, maybe. Brahma? Yeah. Animal? Nah. Me? Next door Sam might. Me? Nah. Look at me. I'm such a nice person. I'm the best there is. There's never been a better model than me. Right? Look at me. Isn't that how you feel? I used to feel like that. I believed in that. I didn't believe in any of this next births, previous births, because I was a very materialistic person. That was the upbringing I had. So I'm sharing a little bit of that because, well, I said I'm going to talk about myself today, not you. I'm talking about myself. You came here to listen. Now listen. So I'm talking about myself. But the reason I share this story is because I know that there'll be among you those who can relate to this. So, while I'm talking about myself, I think there's something you can do. See how your life relates to this life. Are there much differences? Or is it much the same? It's very fair for you to question, why did I ordain? And quite openly and honestly, I share this response with a lot of people. And I'll share it with you today as well. I ordained because I had problems. Issues. I had issues. What kind of issues did I have? Do you know what issues I had? I had money problems. I did. Money problems. Do you know I have money problems? No? Oh wow, okay. You're well off. I had money problems. I had women trouble. Women problems. Issues. This is why I ordained. I had food problems. This is why I ordained. And now you're thinking, yeah, I knew it. Complete failure, right? This is why I ordained. Unlike you, because of surely you don't have any of these problems. This is why you haven't ordained. So you don't have money problems, but I have, or I had, so I ordained. You don't have food problems. This is why you haven't, but I have. I had, this is why I ordained. And you didn't have women problems. You don't, do you? Young men in the room? Women trouble? No? Issues? No. I had. So I ordained. Complete failure in life, right? I'm a complete loser. With a big L across my forehead. Go on, do it. This is why I ordained.